Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Community Town Hall. My name is John Bristowe. I'm the Community Director at Octopus Deploy. I'd like to thank you for your time and attention to join us today on today's webinar. Joining me on today's webinar, we have some big brains at Octopus who have chosen to volunteer their time, which is great. I've got Steve, Bob, Ian, and James joining us. So say hi to everyone.
Hello.
And I invited these folks because they've got a wide gamut of ownership across Octopus. So we've got product managers, we've got solution engineers, we've got folks who participate in writing, and so we've got a lot of folks who can cover a lot of aspects. The Q&A is currently enabled. I will turn that on now. And so if you have any questions at all, feel free to ask. If you have any questions around what's happening around Octopus, what does this feature do? We can all blame Ian for that. So I'm kidding, of course. But if you have any questions at all, if you have any concerns, feedback, etc., feel free to let us know. We're happy to answer those live here on the webinar. This town hall is meant to be your opportunity to engage with us and to hear about the latest and greatest features, as well as see some demos. So we've got some of those queued up today. And to kick things off, I'll go ahead and start by sharing my screen and just share with you some of the news and information that folks may or may not have heard of. So this is octopus.com. This is our website, and there's a lot of great things that you'll find on this page, etc. So we've added a bunch of new capabilities to the site. I keep hitting on this because I love the design. I don't know about you guys, but I think the design is awesome. I think we've really hit a home run here in terms of the design. But if you're at all curious about what's going on relative to Octopus, we try and publish everything on this website. So if this isn't your homepage, at least make it a bookmark. One of the things that I would like to highlight is obviously our upcoming webinars. So later on next month, we have two webinars, one with Guestline, a partner of ours, a customer of ours. And they're going to be doing a webinar entitled How Guestline Saves 2,000 Hours per Release Using Tenants in Octopus. So if you're all curious about what tenants are and how they work, and how Guestline in particular was able to successfully leverage them to do their deployments, this would be a great one to attend. That's on the 17th of August. And then after that, the following week, we'll have a webinar with a partner, ClearMeasure, out of the US, and they'll be talking about database deployments using Octopus, and ClearMeasure will be highlighted as part of that. In addition to that, we'll also have the next edition of this town hall running as part of the August setup. So this town hall will run monthly, the last Wednesday of every month. And this, again, will be your opportunity to ask questions if you at all are curious. You are part of a community, whether you know it or not. So this is our community page. You can join our Slack discussion there if you want. We have our insiders program as well. There's lots of places for us to engage with you. There's our forums, etc. So feel free to take advantage of that. And a page that's near and dear to my heart, of course, is the roadmap. So if you're not aware, roadmap.octopus.com, this would be your second bookmark or your homepage. This is a place where you can go and find all the stuff that we're talking about in terms of features, in terms of things that we're thinking about. It's also your opportunity as a user or a customer of Octopus to give us feedback on features that you see, things that you might want to see coming up, etc. So in particular, there's three sections here, one for under consideration, which is things that we're thinking about, things that are planned, and then, of course, things that have been released. So you can see that listed here. These are all the features that we recently released, including the new script editor, for example, which we'll talk about in a sec, and as well as our planned features. So Ian, this is obviously near and dear to your team's heart. You guys are utilizing Storyboard for this, and I would imagine that you get a lot of feedback through this. Is there anything that you would like to communicate to folks when utilizing the roadmap, or you guys are watching this pretty closely, I would assume?
Yeah, thanks, John. So yeah, just as you mentioned, we are utilizing something called Product Board in order to create this roadmap in Octopus. And yes, a lot of the product managers, basically what we do is that we put down, as you can see under these three tabs, the initiatives that we're currently either considering, that we're planning, or that has already been released. And what's great for the community to know, or anyone that's interested in getting their ideas on the board, or wanting to give feedback on the ideas that are already on the board, is that there's so many ways in order that you can do that. So as you can see, John clicking around, if you want to submit a new idea, you can just submit a new idea using the button above. Or you can actually provide feedback on some of the features that we do have in the existing cart. So for example, one of the things that I want to highlight here, selfishly, because it's one of the features that my team is doing,
Okay.
is the connected project to multiple tenants as a bulk action cart. So just that last cart there, John, on that one. So for example, what we'll have on these cards is that, we'll write out a brief description of the problem that we're trying to solve, the kind of improvements that we might be shipping out. And, if you relate to what's here, or if you like to give feedback on what's here, you're free to do so just down below, by being able to rank how important this is to you, as well as providing a quick comment on that. And this is the same for every card, for all the features that the product managers are responsible for. And yes, we keep an eye on this. We'd love to get your feedback. It really helps us to figure out if we're doing the right thing, or if we are prioritizing the right thing, basically. So yeah, please feel free to jump in here and give your voice to what we want to build next in Octopus.
Awesome. I'm gonna throw some of my requests in there. I love the work that we're doing around tenants, by the way. So we're doing lots and lots of work around tenants, and you may have seen some of the videos that we've published. And speaking of videos, we have our YouTube channel. So we've published a bunch of videos highlighting some of the features that we've added recently, especially around tenants, around Kubernetes, etc. You'll find those up on our YouTube channel, which is at /Octopus Deploy. And we also have a bunch of other shows that we run there, like Deploy on Friday, etc. So feel free to check that out. We're also on social media as well, so feel free to track us on either LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter, or rather X, as we like to call it now. And one of the things that I wanted just to mention here as part of our feature set is we also have a bunch of capabilities that have recently shipped. And incidentally, we have a blog. And so, James, this is a blog post that was recently written by a member, a colleague of your team, Sean, talking about how to deploy to Azure Container Apps. This is a new feature we've added. So did you want to talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, and thanks, John. Actually, this blog just got published just a few moments ago, so it's fresh off the press today. Sean
Awesome.
Cessna is a good friend and colleague of mine. He wrote the blog post, and it's quite extensive, has all the details, but kind of as a brief overview, if you're not familiar, Azure Container Apps, relatively new. It's a fully managed serverless container service from Microsoft. So think about it as Microsoft's answer to ECS. And so Sean goes through all the steps of setting it up and deploying an Azure Container App. There are two step templates that are part of this, so two brand new ones. The first one creates the Azure Container App environment if it doesn't already exist. And that one's obviously an optional step. And then the second one does the actual deployment of that container app. And one of the cool things about that second step template is you have the ability to run it as a managed identity or using an account variable that is part of the project. So flexibility there. Great blog post, highly recommended checking it out.
Yeah, lots. It just keeps scrolling and scrolling, but I guess it's necessary when you're describing these things, because you have to think, like, maybe not a lot of people have maybe heard about this feature, but so there's two step templates here. Sorry, it took me a while to just scroll to it, but create container app environment step. So that's a new one, and this is when you're wanting to deploy to Azure container. And then that's where you have to, if you want to deploy that, you have to first have that environment set up. So that's this step here. And there's a bunch of inputs that it will allow. Actually, why don't you speak to this? Obviously, you mentioned this is right, but this is the step and how it will look.
Yeah, and that bullet list, I don't need to go through all of them, but those are just a few parameters to plug in, and then all of the complex kind of back-end stuff is handled as part of that step template.
Fantastic. So if you're doing anything with Azure containers, which I know some folks are, this is obviously a welcome announcement and hot off the press, as James said. So we've got some things that you can find in this blog post. And so Sean talks about this here, and this is now top and center on our blog, which is at /blog. So you can check that out there if you're all inclined. One of the new features that we've added recently, and Ellen talked about this in her blog post recently, and this is something that happened since the last town hall we featured, is we updated our script editor. So the script editor got a little bit of a uplift, and I love posts like this where it's not necessarily a brand new feature, but what it is a refinement or an improvement on what we had previously. So the old script editor looked something like this. So you had this sort of button list, and it would allow you to denote what language you were writing your script in. And now we've got the kind of cool looking script environment. So the reason why I like these is because it provides a little bit of the backstory about how and why we did this change. And so Ellen talks a little bit about what this looks like. No functional difference, but basically provides a better capabilities in terms of where things are and how they sit. So we've kind of collapsed things into hidden drop downs, etc. And so if you're all inclined to check that out, we've got a blog post that talks about this. Obviously, if you're running things like Octopus Cloud, you'll just see these magically light up as you see the updates roll out. But if you're wanting to understand the sort of behind the music, this is definitely a post worth checking out. And so that's from Ellen Long. And that's available, again, on our blog. We try our best to blog a great deal about features that are coming. I know that Ian and his folks over on the product management side are definitely talking about these things. We talk about those sorts of aspects. We also talk about aspects related to, things that are relevant to Octopus, like config as code, for example, and other high-level sort of macro deployment issues, if you will. So those are things worth mentioning. But when we talk about those sort of macro issues, one of the things that can come into play, obviously, is sort of the thinking around continuous delivery and continuous deployment. And Steve, you were part of a conversation recently highlighting an element of a report published by the CD Foundation. The report itself is called the State of Continuous Delivery Report, and this is published by Slashdata and the CD Foundation. Tell folks a little bit about this report and how you got a little bit involved in it.
Yeah, so the report's really useful because it's a big sample. I think off the top of my head, something like 33,000 responses in the data set. So it makes it quite a reasonable place to go and look for information. And Slashdata were asked to go and look into that data set to find out about continuous delivery and a little bit of DevOps as well, because they're so closely related. I was invited to kind of speak on TechStrong about it, about some of the interesting findings in there. One of the interesting things about it was it found that 84% of developers say that they're doing some DevOps practices. But one of the interesting things about that is only 34% of them were doing automated deployments, and only 27% were doing automated testing, which I thought was interesting, because if you're doing continuous delivery and you're not automating the deployments or automating your testing, there's like a really big opportunity to improve your whole continuous delivery process. So that was something that I thought was quite interesting in that report. But one of the really big findings in there was about DevOps tools. There's a really interesting part in there that says CI/CD tools are the ones that are making people successful. Although there's a caveat that says if you self-host loads of them, it actually starts becoming a bit of a burden. So Be cautious. Don't just self-host them all yourself. But CI/CD tools are definitely the sweet spot for the tools. And it also found that teams that are using more tools are higher performers than teams that are kind of opting for fewer tools, which is interesting because there's a lot of conversation at the moment about trying to find one big platform that will do everything for us. But it turns out that might not be the right way to go. So that was a really interesting finding in the report.
I think you and I discussed this on we did discuss this on a YouTube video where you and I chatted about how more tools, not less tools, actually provide or anecdotally provide better velocity for teams who are delivering software, for example. So there's no silver bullet for folks who are doing CI/CD processes.
That's right. Yeah, I think one of the caveats is that the tools have to fit nicely together into a tool
Correct.
chain. So the report said that you can kind of end up with interoperability problems if you don't make the right choices. So there are cautionary notes around it, but it definitely says, get in there and solve problems. And there are tools that do that for you really easily. So that's definitely the way to go.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, so if you're all curious, you can find this up on the CD Foundation website, which is at cd.foundation. And yes, .foundation is a TLD or top level domain. There's some TLDs that always like surprise me. I'm like, oh wow, .foundation. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
But this is something they've published 3 years now, and it's good information to convince your boss, your team, etc. about, hey, maybe we should do a little bit more around our delivery of software, for example. So you can check that out. It's available off of the website there. And as I mentioned before, Steve was part of a conversation as a participant in a TechStrong TV panel discussion. And so you can check out the recording. It's available up on YouTube. So that's awesome. Great. So again, this is a community town hall. If you have any questions whatsoever about the things you've seen here, or any questions in general around Octopus, feel free to go ahead and ask them. Our Q&A is open, and we can highlight questions there and have a conversation around these sorts of things if you're all curious. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing now. And what I would like to do is turn things over to who wants to go next. Bob, would you like to go next?
Sure.
To show a little demo?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah, so it's funny that you mentioned the CD Foundation and the State of Continuous Delivery report, because one of the findings was not a whole lot of people are doing their automated deployments. And even the folks that are doing automated deployments, oftentimes they're not including the database as part of it. James, you talk to a lot of customers. Ian, you talk to a lot of customers as well. Are you kind of noticing that, where it's mostly like they're really focused on the code bit, and then the database kind of gets drug along for the ride halfway through or at the end?
Yeah, it almost seems like it's maybe even an afterthought. Everything's locked down. They got the code going out great, and then, oh, by the way, we need to do the database stuff at the end.
Yep, similar to James. I think for some of our customers, it's obviously a part and parcel of what they're doing. But yeah, for lots, definitely it's something that's more of a afterthought rather than something that they're currently baking in part of their process.
Yeah, I guess, Steve, as being on that panel and talking through that, was that one of the findings as well? Was a lot of the focus more on the on the code side rather than the database side?
Yeah, so databases, it's quite common there's a whole bunch of companies that are using like schema compare to try and work out what to do with their database, and then
that sounds fun.
what they do to schema compare for their test environment doesn't produce something that actually would work on their production environment. So then they're doing another schema compare for the production environment, and it's like that means that the scripts that you're going to try and create for that are never going to run anywhere until you go live, which is like scary.
Yeah, I always love the old Simpsons quote, "What could possibly go wrong?" Or nothing, or nothing could possibly go wrong on something like that. Yeah, and it's funny. I was talking with some folks over at Redgate recently, and they're saying kind of the same thing as well. And so, what I wanted to highlight today, after that long preamble, was share my screen. What I'd like to share is one of the step templates that I've written, which is the Flyway step template. So if you're not familiar with Flyway is a tool that can deploy almost any database technology out there. And one of the really cool things about Flyway is you write the migration scripts, and then you store those migration scripts. So you're going to be migration schema change scripts. You're storing those inside of your source control. And what it will look like, let me go ahead and pull up my folder. What it'll look like inside of your source control itself is nothing super complex. So I want to add a URL slug to space. I can go ahead and open this up with code. And we can see what that script looks like. And what's nice about this is this script, it will run, and it will be the exact same script that runs across all of the environments, which is incredibly important. If I run it across dev, I know it's going to work on dev. I know it's going to work on test because the script isn't super complex. I have a much greater confidence if I'm going out to our staging environment or to our production environment or anything like that. But one of the cool things about Flyway is it also keeps track of the changes that you're about to make or the scripts that you need to run. And if it detects that this script is already run, it's not going to rerun it over and over again. And Visual Studio Code's really bugging me today. And so what the step template does is Flyway has a number of different features and functionality built into it. And so this step template kind of, I would say, wraps all of that. And so we have the standard migrate command, which just migrates the database changes to the latest version. But some of the newer changes that I added in there recently was the check changes, check drift, and then check dry run. And what this will do is it'll allow us to build up this level of trust with our database deployments. So I can dry run my database deployment, and then I can generate a report and make sure that it's going to work and everything's looking good. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to create a new release. You can see where I've been testing this out this morning. So tenant descriptions.
Old, new, whatever data schema you want to come up with.
And so this will go ahead and kick off. And one of the things that I do for this particular environment is I actually will completely wipe the database. Oh, it looks like it's detecting that it's a redeploy. So I'm gonna have to go ahead and let's go ahead and create a new release for this. Not a big deal. Again, danger of doing things live when you're not expecting it.
That's okay.
And I'll make sure that this other deployment, okay, that deployment finished. So what it's doing right now is it's configuring my database server. It's going through it. It's making sure that everything is the way that it's supposed to be. It will verify that the database exists. It will go ahead and it will actually, for development, it will clean out my database completely. So it's completely empty schema. So we'll be able to see what the dry run report actually looks like. And then assuming everything, and because of that, then it will go ahead and then assuming everything looks good, then I'll go ahead and deploy those changes. And then it will check to make sure that those changes were successfully applied. So this is all about building up that trust level and understanding what's going to happen and what's not going to happen for your database deployments on something like that.
Just as an FYI for folks who don't know anything about Flyway, I've included a link in the chat to the website, which is at flywaydb.org. Awesome. So this is going to do a dry run and give me a comparison. And then obviously, if it's available, it will be available for folks to check and validate whether or not it will be successful. So as Bob is showing there, because he's frozen, there's the dry run there. And you can pull it down. He's obviously talking, but hopefully he can hear me talk. And this is me tap dancing because Bob, you're frozen on my end. So there's the report, comes down as HTML. I'll keep talking while Bob is doing the demo. And then this will show you the comparison. So the before and after with changes for schema changes. This is where Bob's kicking his webcam. We're doing this live, folks. Come on. Is it just me, or are you hearing Bob as well?
No. It's you're on. You're good, John.
Okay.
We lost Bob.
Yep. All right, no worries. So Bob, we can still see your demo, but we can't hear you, unfortunately. So hopefully you can kick your webcam and it will start working. We need a script template or a step template for webcam integration there, Bob. So maybe you can build that next. But that's nice. So you can do a dry run here to do schema comparisons, validate that everything looks good, and then if and when you're ready to do a deployment, you can validate that. So this is basically the deployment itself for migration. So you can see the migrations based on the various versions you have there, which are listed. So version 2 to 7, as you can see, the change report, which is not available, and let's see. I'm trying to read off what Bob's trying to kind of imply. This is like interpretive dance here, Bob. So there you go.
Great.
And then we can check for database drift. So if you're wanting to see the comparison, so no report to show, your database is in sync. So this is obviously for a deployment that was successful because your database is now in sync after the fact. And then if that's the case, then you know everything's gone ahead and everything's good to go. So this is great because Flyway is a great tool for basically increasing the reliability of deployments when it comes to versioning your database schemas, which is obviously a hard problem. Database schemas are inevitably difficult just to get right from a normalization perspective, but if you're migrating to and from different versions, that's a whole other can of worms. Cool. So Bob, shake your mouse up and down if you have anything else to show. There you go. Thanks, Bob. Awesome. So James, did you want to show off anything? Did you have a demo that you thought would be kind of cool to highlight there?
Just that Azure container app piece that we looked at right in the beginning.
Right. Yep. Cool. So yeah, again, just to remind folks, if you're at all curious, you can read it up on our blog, which is at octopus.com/blog. And great to see that new. That's hot off the press. So that's great to see. So anyways, if you have any questions at all, feel free to ask them. Otherwise, hey, Bob's back. How's it going?
Good. I guess I guess the demo couldn't handle the awesomeness of seeing.
That's right.
Both the Flyway and then my face at the same time. I shouldn't have tempted fate like that. Sorry about that, everyone.
That's okay.
John, you did a really good job of tap dancing. I could hear you the entire time.
That's great.
Yeah, you covered everything that I wanted to cover. So yes. The only thing I was going to add in there was that Flyway was purchased by Redgate, and so they're making a concentrated effort to do a number of different investments in there. And the big reason is it's cross-platform support. So it's not just a SQL server; it's going to be going to Oracle, MySQL, PostgreSQL, SQLite, Snowflake, any type of database technology that you can think of. It supports. So
awesome.
That's really cool.
And yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I thought it was really cool the additional features it's got on top of just running your script and remembering which one it's run. I was quite surprised at how much there was in there, and I want to give it a try now.
Yeah, the check feature and functionality that I was showing off, that's a new piece of functionality that was recently added. And what that does is it will actually build almost a shadow database, and it will run the migration for you, and then it will do the comparison it'll run that migration on that shadow database and kind of see everything that's about to change. And so that way that's how it builds out that migration report for you. So you can see what's about to change, but then also what scripts are going to run to change it. So you kind of get a bit of both. So it's kind of the best of both worlds.
That's great. Hey,
just in case,
Bob,
just in case folks are curious, like why you see different versions of this. I know I'm just pointing this out in case anyone's seen this before. The old version of our step templates, you had to disassociate or associate one with a certain environment. So that's why you see the /bash. Sorry, I interrupted here.
Yeah, no worries. Bob, if we kind of talked in the beginning how we come across a lot of customers that aren't automating their database deployments. Is diving into Flyway, is that a good starting point in your opinion for beginning to automate your database deployments?
Yes, with a lot of the new changes that have been created, it's becoming much easier to do your database deployments. One of the more difficult things I think that everyone struggles with, especially at the beginning, is getting developers to write those migrations scripts, those add table, alter table. That's a very terse syntax, and if you're not doing it all the time, it's hard to remember all the different commands that's out there. And so with some of their newer features that Flyway offers, it will allow you to make the changes that you want to your database, and then they have a Flyway desktop tool that will then generate those migration scripts automatically for you and check those migration scripts in. And so it's making that much, much easier. Now, if you're comfortable with just writing the migration scripts yourself, you can do the exact same thing with Flyway as well. So I think it's a good place to get started with what you want to do.
Yeah, it sounds.
And Bob, you recently did a webinar with the folks at Redgate talking about database migrations. Did you not?
Yes, and in fact, that was the demonstration that you saw that was frozen and John had to step in. It was a much smoother demonstration of what I just discussed, and I got a chance to do that with Steve Jones, which if you haven't had a chance to do any sort of database automation or learn about any sort of database automation, he is up there on like the Mount Rushmore, in my opinion. And so I was really fortunate to be able to do that. And he is very, very, very knowledgeable when it comes to databases, automating deployments, everything like that.
Fantastic. And incidentally, we have a copy of that webinar, and we'll be posting that to our YouTube channel very shortly. It is available there. I just haven't posted the thumbnail and all that, so I just got to clean it up. But it will be available there shortly, and we'll make sure to share that with folks in the community. So great stuff. Awesome. I don't see any questions in the Q&A, which is fine. That's no problem. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And I think this kind of is a good place for us to wrap up the community town hall. As I said, this is your opportunity to connect with us. And if you have any questions, feel free to hit us up, either up on Slack or the forum there. But on behalf of everyone here, I'd like to thank James, Ian, Steve, and Bob for attending today's webinar. Really appreciate it. Thanks a lot. And we'll be hosting another one of these later in August. The last Wednesday of every month is when we plan to host these community town halls. And so feel free to sign up there, and we'll post a recording of this up on our YouTube channel. So again, thanks a lot for attending, everyone. And we hope to see you at the next community town hall. So thanks again. Take care.
Thanks a lot.